Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I wanted to show you guys a really fun watercolor technique that you can use with your die cuts. This is some freezer paper and I'm going to cut it out using two dies from Paper Smooches. Freezer paper is really interesting. It has a slick surface on one side, it's kind of shiny, it's kind of a waxy surface, and the other is a very matte surface. So I'm going to be using the freezer paper with the shiny side down with my dies on top. This makes it so that when I put the die cuts on my project, that shiny side is touching the watercolor paper. You want to make sure that you die cut it that way, especially when you have a word die or something like that, it would really matter what direction it is. So I'm taking some Canson watercolor paper. This is Canson Montval watercolor paper, and I'm placing the die cut on the top and then using an iron to really press that die cut into the watercolor paper. This is going to melt that waxy side of the paper, and it's going to seep into the watercolor paper and seal off that area directly underneath the die cut. This is a way to do paper masking with watercoloring without having any of the trouble of the watercolor seeping underneath the mask, because the waxy surface of the freezer paper is going to seal off that paper. So if you try this technique, you want to make sure that you really iron this a lot. You want to apply a lot of heat to make sure that wax layer melts. So I'm using some watercolors and just putting them over the top. You can use this with any watercolor medium you want. You can do a lot of techniques over the top of this freezer paper. If you try this and the freezer paper doesn't really protect the paper underneath, or if it starts peeling up, try again, and this time make sure that you really heat set it quite a bit, or use an iron to really melt that wax layer onto the watercolor paper. So I'm dropping in just some various colors, kind of a rainbow color on this one, making sure I'm getting lots of color on that. And then I'm going to set it aside to dry. I'm going to let it dry initially, just air dry, because I don't want to add heat to this quite yet. For this other one, I'm using kind of a magenta and then also a purple, letting those colors mix a little bit on the paper. And then I'm also going to set this one aside to dry. Now I'm back to the original one, and I'm using my heat tool to, well, it's all completely dry now. So now I'm using my heat tool just to heat up that freezer paper once again. I want to melt that wax so that it's easier to remove. You could try just peeling it off yourself, but I find it much easier if you really heat set it and let that wax kind of soften up so that as you peel it up, you won't be peeling any of the paper. Did want to mention that if you're looking for freezer paper locally, check your local grocery store. I think freezer paper originally came on a roll, kind of like aluminum foil or wax paper, and so it was used to wrap up meats or deli sandwiches. So freezer paper originally was not intended for crafting, obviously, because that's why it's called freezer paper. But that's the type of paper you can use. I know a few crafters who use just the roll of Reynolds freezer paper, and it works really well for them. You can also buy freezer paper from Simon Says Stamp. That's the type of freezer paper that I'm using today. It comes in 8.5 by 11 sheets, so it's a little bit more convenient because you don't have that big roll of freezer paper that you have to cut down to smaller pieces. But it's definitely just another option for purchasing your freezer paper. So I'm peeling off that mask, and you can see how clean and white that watercolor paper is underneath. I think it's just so cool, and it's another way to use both your dies and your watercolors. I'm preparing my card bases for these cards. One card is going to be a standard size card with a side fold, and the other is going to be 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. The watercolor paper I used today was 4 by 6, so I had to cut that down to a square to make it 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. Those are the really simple cards for today. If you wanted to step these up a bit, you could add a little bit of shimmer or some sequins, but I'm going to keep them pretty simple, keep them kind of one layer cards, even though I did adhere them with foam, and then send them off to my friends. Thanks so much for watching today's video, and I will catch you guys next time.